الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Again, we'll have a short talk on purification, and today we'll talk about wudu. We all know how to make wudu, correct? So that's the end of the class. Very easy, very simple. No, inshallah, there's a number of things we have to talk about in wudu, and actually a lot of things maybe that we might learn new today, or some things that we might be able to explain better to our children when we're teaching them how to make wudu, for example. So there's three main things we have to talk about, which is the rules on wudu itself, and the things which can be wiped, mamsuhat. So we say, for example, your socks, a khuf, if you're wearing those leather kind of socks, the turban, can you wipe on a turban if you're wearing a turban? Can a woman wipe on her khimar, her hijab? If you're wearing a cast, if you broke your arm, or you broke a limb, or you're wearing a band-aid, or something like that, can you wipe on this? So how do we wipe on those things? That's the second thing we're going to talk about, maybe next time, perhaps not today. And then also what breaks the wudu. So for example, some things are agreed upon, such as using the restroom, this breaks the wudu. Or some things are not agreed upon. For example, eating the meat of a camel. Is there a hadith in this? Is the hadith authentic? And so on. So we have a number of things to discuss there. So the first is the actual wudu itself, the actions of wudu. And maybe you guys can help by reminding, like, what's the steps of the wudu. So first of all, what is the first thing the first step of wudu? Niyyah. Very good. Everyone got it right. So the first thing is niyyah, right? And this we'll talk about it also when we come to the issue of ghusl. That if you, for example, if you just if you just are under the shower, for example, or you jump in a swimming pool, and then you say, I'm all wet, I already got all wet, so I just took that shower after you got out, let me make that my wudu. Let me consider that my ghusl, for example, or my wudu. Does that count? So they say no, because you have to have niyyah or intention before starting. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ. The actions are only by their intentions. So therefore, to make a wudu, you have to have the intention first of all. Then the second step of the wudu is what? To say Bismillah. Yes, to say Bismillah. And in the hadith that has some disputed over its authenticity, لا وضوء لمن لم يذكر اسم الله عليه. That there is no wudu for the one who does not make or does not say Bismillah for that wudu. The majority of scholars, they say that this saying of Bismillah is recommended and not wajib. It's not something that you have to do, but rather it's recommended and it's a sunnah. And Imam Ahmad, he said it's a wajib. Imam Ahmad is wajib. And by the way, so when we talk about wudu, we'll try to mention some of the different madahib. The strictest of all of these madahib is Imam Ahmad. Or we could say the safest side is Imam Ahmad, the madhab Hanbali. He basically takes everything that the Prophet ﷺ did in wudu, and he says it's wajib. Everything that the Prophet ﷺ did is wajib. So for example, we have a number of things which are disputed. Are they wajib, or something you have to do, or something which is recommended? So all of the scholars, they agreed about 4 limbs in the wudu that you have to wash. Why? Because they're mentioned in the Quran. So the things which are mentioned in the Quran, there's no disputing about that. All the scholars agreed about it. So what are those 4 things mentioned in the Quran? يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. O you who believe, when you stand up for salah, wash your face. فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. What's the next thing? وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. The next thing Allah says in this ayah, and your arms up to the elbow. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. Your head, wipe your head. وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. And your feet, up until the ankle. So these 4 things are mentioned in the Quran. Therefore, there's no difference of opinion about these 4. But we have some other things in the wudu that are disputed. So Imam Ahmad, he says, basically, if the Prophet ﷺ did it always in his wudu, we say it's wajib also. So what else beyond these things mentioned in the Quran? For example, the madmada and istinshaq, putting water in your nose and your mouth. So most of the scholars, they say these are sunnah actions. If you missed it, if you just washed your face in wudu and you did not put the water in your mouth or nose, your wudu is still valid. And Imam Ahmad, he says no, your wudu is not valid. Same thing with the ears, for example, wiping on the ears. The majority, they say you have to wipe, the majority say that it's sunnah, recommended to wipe your ears. All you have to do is wipe your head, your hair, but if you don't wipe your ears, your wudu is still valid. Same thing, Imam Ahmad, he says no, it's wajib. You have to wipe your ears. He said you have to say Bismillah before starting. So that's the strictest of opinion, is usually the Hanbali opinion, but the other ones, sometimes they say these actions are sunnah or recommended. So we were still talking about the act of Bismillah, saying Bismillah before you start the wudu. Inshallah, this is a sunnah recommended action and not something wajib. And even Imam Ahmad, he says if you forgot it, it's okay, you don't have to go and restart your, or it's okay if you don't say it. So you say Bismillah as a recommendation, and we talked last week about what do you do about saying Bismillah in the bathroom. So inshallah it's okay, and it's something you should say, to say Bismillah before starting the wudu. Again, because of the differences we mentioned last week between our modern day bathrooms and the bathrooms that existed at the time, the Prophet ﷺ. For now, the bathroom, you flush the toilet and the najasa leaves the room. So this is a way that you could consider that the bathroom is not an area where you necessarily can't say the name of Allah or Bismillah. Rather, you should say it because you have removed the najasa from the area, so therefore it's okay. So what is the next step after saying Bismillah? What is the next step after saying Bismillah? To wash the hands. To turn the water on and wash your hands. So washing your hands here, what is this? Sunnah, wajib? Sunnah. It's not mentioned in the Quran, right? We noticed, what did Allah start in the Quran? Your face. So the hands are not mentioned in the Quran. And even Imam Ahmad here, he says, no, this is also a sunnah. So all of the scholars, they agreed that this washing of the hands in the beginning of the wudu is a sunnah. It's not wajib. It's not something that you have to do. Now, we have two questions here. How many times do we wash our hands? 3 times as a what? You must, or a sunnah recommendation. So everything in wudu that you wash, it only has to be done 1 time, once. The bare minimum is once. And then if you're washing a 2nd time or a 3rd time, this is a sunnah, and it's better to do so. It's better to do it up to 3 times for everything that you wash. Why do we say wash? Because sometimes you wipe things in wudu like you wipe your hair. So you don't wipe your hair 3 times actually. You only do it once. If you wipe your hair, when you wipe your hair, you only do it once. When you wipe your socks, do you wipe your socks 3 times? 1 time also. So anything you wipe, you only wipe once. Anything you wash it 3 times as a recommendation, but it could be 2 times or it could be 1 as the bare minimum. All of these are fine. You wash your hands up to the wrist. You wash your hands, and this is a sunnah washing. So this is part of the wudu. We have something special here, which is, what if you wake up in the morning and the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, when one of you wakes up in the morning, do not put your hands directly in the water before washing them 3 times, because you don't know where your hands have been. فَإِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ لَا يَدْرِي أَيْنَ بَاتَتْ يَدُهُ. Which is logical, right? That the Prophet ﷺ is telling you, you don't know where you put your hand at night. You could have put it inside your clothes, you could have put it in somewhere dirty, and then in the morning you wake up and you just start putting the water in your mouth right away. This is not clean. So he said, wash your hands 3 times. Wash your hands 3 times when you wake up in the morning. And this is, sunnah, and it's hygienic, it's clean, so that you clean your hands before putting the water directly into your mouth. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you don't know where your hand went during the night time. So this is something extra recommended to do in the morning time, to wash your hands 3 times before you start your wudu. And these 3 times could be combined with the 3 times of washing your hands. So you don't have to do it 6 times. You don't have to wash your hands 3 times for waking up, and then another 3 times for starting your wudu. You could combine both of them into one thing and just wash your hands 3 times before starting your wudu. Then what do you wash now? Your face, your mouth, right? We didn't get yet to our arms. Your face. And your face is comprised of 3 things when you wash it, which is your madmada, washing your mouth, istinshaq, which is taking the water up into your nose, which also includes istinthar, which is expelling the water from your nose, and then washing the face. These are all considered one thing. There are three things, but they're all considered like one limb, which is your face. Your mouth and your nose is considered part of your face. Some of you might say, like, what do you mean it's considered part of your face? What's the difference? Fiqh is a very precise science, and the scholars of fiqh, they didn't just make up these rules out of nowhere, and then they don't think about the repercussions. Actually, you'll see that every time they say a rule, it will apply somewhere else in fiqh in a way which matches it. So, for example, we said the mouth is part of your face. The mouth is part of your face, meaning like the outward part. And it's not considered to be like inner or part of your insides. So that means when you wash your face, you have to wash your mouth also. And this applies in a different chapter. For example, if you have to taste food in Ramadan, is that okay? Like if you put food on your tongue to make sure that you put salt on the food, is that permissible?
Yes,
yes, permissible. So therefore, why is it permissible in Ramadan to do that, to put something and taste it on your tongue? Why? Because your mouth is part of your outward, it's part of your face. And if it was part of your inside, like your throat is, for example, if that food was to reach your throat, it would break your fast. But just to put it on your tongue and to taste it, doesn't break your fast. And even it applies to other chapters, but it's not the time to mention it, but they say, for example, like, if somebody drinks alcohol, they would receive the punishment in Islam. But that would be if they drank alcohol and it reached their throat. What if they just put it in their mouth, for example, and they spit it up? So the scholars, they talk about these rules of fiqh, and they apply these rules to every chapter. So therefore, washing your mouth is part of your face. And you rinsing your nose is part of your washing of the face also. So how do we wash the mouth? There's the bare minimum, the scholars, they say, is to put the water in your mouth and to move it like the absolute bare minimum of moving, just to move it slightly. Just to put water in your mouth and to move it slightly. That's the bare minimum. It does not have to reach everywhere in your mouth. So for example, if you ate some food and there's still, some food cooking, like on your teeth, blocking some of your teeth. Sometimes the food gets stuck and it's like blocking the teeth. So is your madmada still valid? Is your washing of your mouth still valid? Yes, because you don't have to wash every part of the inside of your mouth. You just have to get the water in your mouth and to move it slightly. As opposed to washing your limbs. We said if you had a little bit of food on your teeth, that would not affect your wudu. But what about if you're washing your arm and you miss just, a small size, like the size of a coin? Is your wudu still valid? No, so it's different. If you're washing the limbs on the outside, you have to wash it all. And the Prophet ﷺ said, before I forget, a very important hadith at the end of the wudu when you wash your feet. The Prophet ﷺ, he saw the companions rushing. They were in a travel and they were rushing to make wudu so they would catch the salah. So they were kind of being fast. So the Prophet ﷺ saw that some of them were not performing wudu properly, in that they were washing their feet just like very quickly and maybe missing a part of the heel. So the Prophet ﷺ called out with a very loud voice, وَيْلٌ لِلْأَعْقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ. He said, woe to your heels from the hellfire. Like if you do not perform correctly the wudu and you're not washing your heels correctly, woe to those heels from the hellfire. So it's very important that we perform all of the parts of wudu, we wash everything properly. But as we said, certain parts of the wudu are more flexible than others. So like the mouth, for example, you don't have to get the water all throughout the mouth. Actually, the scholars, they mentioned that it would be like an innovation or a bid'ah for you to like take the water in your mouth and gargle it. Like you gargle mouthwash or something like that. You don't have to do that. You should not do that because the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't do that. Just to take the water in your mouth and to move it around slightly, this is enough. And you don't have to raise your head and do it like you do with mouthwash. So to wash the mouth and to spit it out, all of this is part of the sunnah of madmada, which is moving the water in your mouth. The next thing you would do after that is the nose, which is to take the water and inhale it in your nose like this. To take it and slightly, again, the same thing. If you just get it in your nose, that's enough. If you just get the water in your nose, that's enough. But the sunnah is to take it in like a little bit stronger than that. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith of Laqit ibn al-Sabira, he said, بالغ في الاستنشاق إلا أن تكون صائما. The Prophet ﷺ said you should exaggerate in this except if you're fasting. Meaning the sunnah is to do it like strongly, to exaggerate into taking it into your nose, which for most people will hurt. Until you get used to it, it will not be like comfortable. But once you get used to it, this is the sunnah, to take the water and to take it into your nose. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ صَائِمًا, except if you're fasting. If you're fasting in Ramadan or any other fast, don't take it so strongly into your nose because it may go down and go into your throat. So you do it lightly when you're fasting, otherwise to do it strongly. And then to wash your face. What's the definition? What is considered your face? They say from the beginning of where your hair normally grows until your chin. Why do they say where your hair normally grows? I'm not looking at anybody in particular, but why do they say where your hair normally grows? Because your hair might, some people's hair might grow, back here or the top of their head. So they say where the hair normally grows, that's where you wash your face and wudu. And then from one ear to another. From one ear to another. So basically from where your hair normally grows, most people's hair normally grows till their chin. And then from one ear to another, that includes the jawline, and that includes this white space behind your ear. Most people don't, shouldn't say most people, but many people don't realize that. So they might wash their face and wudu, and they leave this area back here. And they said from ear to ear. So therefore this part of your, this white space behind your sideburns, this white space, or might be brown space, depending on what you are, that this area has to be washed also. This is part of the face. And also the beard. So the beard has to be washed, and the mustache has to be washed. But the scholars, they mention different things, which is a light beard versus a heavy beard, right? So some people's beard is light, and some people's beard is heavy. And it could be on the same beard, some areas are light and some areas are heavy. So if the beard is light, meaning that you can see the skin underneath it, then this should be washed just like the rest of the face. If the beard is light and you can see the skin color from the beard, like when you look at it, then in this case you need to wash the beard like all the way to the inside of the skin, and you cannot just wipe the outside of the beard. As for if the beard is thick, and if you look at the beard you cannot see the skin color underneath the beard, then at this point you only wash the outside of the beard. So a man, for example, he will wash his face and what is on his face of skin. And then he will reach the beard area, and then he just continues washing the outward of it. So you don't, of course, we all know this, you don't have to take a lot of water and wash the inside of your beard to wash it all from the inside. Rather, you just continue like you wash your face, you would just reach down and wash the outside of your face, your beard also. And then if the beard extends long, you would also just wash the outside of that also. You would just wash your face and then continue to wash the beard as it extends down if it's longer. Same thing for a mustache, for example. If the mustache is thick, you would need to wash only the outside of it. Then we have something which is sunnah, which is called at-takhleel, which is basically to allow water to reach the inside of the beard. This is sunnah. It's not something you have to do, but the Prophet ﷺ would recommend it, or he would do it himself. Which is to take some water. You could do it in two different ways. To take some water after you washed your face, and just to go like this, and put some water like this under your beard, so it reaches inside. Again, this is a sunnah, and you don't have to do it. And another way is to take some water and to run your fingers through your beard as if they're like a comb. So this is not mandatory, it's not wajib, something you have to do. What's wajib is just to wash your face and the outside of the beard. As for taking water and running it through the beard, this is a sunnah or recommended action. This is most of everything that relates to the face. What if you change the order within one limb? Or let me put this question in a different way. What if you change the order of your wudu? Is your wudu valid? Like you wash your feet first, then you wash your face, then you wipe your hair. Is your wudu valid? No. So the order of the wudu is part of the wudu. But let me ask you this question. What if you wash the outside of your face and then you washed your nose, and then you washed your mouth. Is that valid?
Yes.
But you changed the order. But it's all part of the face. Very good. So everything which is considered like one thing, then it's okay if you change the order. Like for example, if you wash your face and then you did madmada and istinshaq afterwards. Or for example, what if you washed your left arm first and then your right arm? They said that's okay, no problem. Or what if you wiped your ears and then you wiped your head? Again, that's not a problem. You went against the sunnah, which is to do it that way, but if you forgot or you weren't paying attention or whatever, or even on purpose, your wudu is still valid. One last thing I forgot to mention. So how do you wash your mouth and your nose? The sunnah is to do it in a way which might take some practice, which is to take one amount of water, like a handful of water, and to do both your mouth and nose at one time. So you take the water and to take it in your mouth and to take some in your nose with one water like that. And for a lot of people, they might not be used to it. It takes some practice. So you take some water, take it in your mouth, and then take it in your nose with one water. What do many people do? They do it, instead of like 3 times like this, they do it 6 times. Which is, they wash their mouth 3 times water, and then they wash their nose 3 times with water. Is that okay? Yes, it's okay. But what's the sunnah? Like what was narrated more in the hadith, is that the Prophet ﷺ would do it the first way that I mentioned. That he would take the water and do both his mouth and nose in one handful. And you might have to practice a little to get used to it, but it's not, it's not something hard, very hard. Washing the face, then what's next? The arms. To wash the arms. Now when we washed our hands in the beginning of wudu, that was just sunnah. So you have to wash your hands again. You have to wash your hands again, all the way from your hands all the way to your elbows. Does it have to be hands to elbows? Could you start at your elbows and wash down to your hands? That's okay, no problem. Either way you do it, it's flexible. But you just have to reach the water to all of your arm. Now we have an issue here, which is, do I have to do what's called delk, which is to rub the water? Or, for example, if there's a faucet running and I just run my arm under the water, is that permissible? It is permissible? Yeah, so the majority of scholars, they say delk or rubbing the water into your limb is not a wajib of wudu, something you have to do. The only one that says so is Imam Malik. Imam Malik, that Maliki madhab, they say you have to use your hand to rub the water in. As for the other 3 madhabs, they say no. It's okay if you just, for example, you have a sink or the shower, for example, you just let the water hit your face, and then you let the water run over your arm, and you let the water, for example, run over your head, and then you let the water run over your feet. They say that's enough. Even if you didn't wash your hand with your hands, rub with your hands, they say that's permissible. Imam Malik, he says no, you have to do that because that's the way the Prophet ﷺ used to do it. But inshallah, if you just let the water run over the limb, this is fine and it's still acceptable. All the way up to the elbow, and we have to be careful, and we have to tell our kids to be careful when they make wudu, because a lot of people rush and they don't wash their elbow. If you looked at the elbow, you would see that it's dry, and this is not permissible. So you have to wash up to and including the elbow, as Allah mentions in the Quran. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. How much time have we taken? Maybe we'll try to wrap up very quickly, inshallah. So you wash your arms and including every part, you don't want to miss any spot. Then what comes after this? وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. Then to wipe your head. To wipe your head, and this includes, as we said, wiping the ears also. And the way that the Prophet ﷺ did it in the hadith of Uthman and other hadith is that the Prophet ﷺ took his hands and wiped over all of his head, and then he continued to wipe back. So he went all the way back, and then he brought them again all the way forward. So that's how the Prophet ﷺ would do it, and it was narrated also in some other different ways too. So if you wipe your head, as long as you wipe all of your head in whatever way, whether from back to front or front to back, all of this is permissible and there's no problem and it fulfills the sunnah. But we do have a question, which is, what if you didn't wipe all of your head? By the way, when you're wiping, you take less water than when you're washing. You only have to take a little bit. You don't have to have a handful of water. Whereas when you're washing a limb, you have to take enough water to actually wash, like the water would be running off. When it comes to wiping, you just have to get your hands wet and wipe your head. That's it. Same thing, wiping your socks, you don't have to use a lot of water. So what if somebody wipes only a part of their head? This is permissible according to some of the scholars. So there's a split amongst the madhahib, that some of them, Maliki and Hanbali, they say it's okay, or they say, excuse me, you have to wipe all of your head, from the front to the back. Whereas the Hanafis and the Shafi'is are more flexible with some difference between their madhahib. They say if you only wiped part of your head, this would be permissible, even if you didn't wipe your full head. The same difference of opinion they say when it comes to Hajj too, like shaving your head in Hajj or Umrah. Some of them say you have to shave your whole head for it to count. And some of them say no, if you only shave a fourth of your head, or you only shave some of the hairs on your head, that it's still permissible and it counts. So the same difference of opinion there is the same difference of opinion here. To be on the safe side, you should wipe all of your head from the front to the back, or the back to the front, as we said. It doesn't matter, but as long as you wipe most of your head, or all of your head, or all of your hair, excuse me. Then followed by what? To wash your feet. To wash your feet, and that includes all the way up to the ankles. And to include the ankles and to include the heels, and we mentioned the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, woe to the heels from the hellfire. So inshallah we'll end here. The issue of things we can wipe on, such as wiping on socks, wiping on a cast or a band-aid, or wiping on the turban and things like that, we'll leave it for next time inshallah. Any questions before we end? Yes? Yes, very good question. This is something I was meant to mention. So he said, what if somebody dries with a towel and then they remembered, for example, that they didn't wash their feet? So we have another condition of wudu, which is what's called al-muwala, which means that it comes in succession. Every part you wash it in succession. So what if there's a short gap between your wudu? That's perfectly fine. For example, you go to a sink and the sink is not working, so you walk, for a few seconds to another sink and you finish up your wudu there, like a 10-second gap or a 30-second gap or even like a minute. They say the criteria here, or the way to tell, is if the previous limb does not dry. If the previous limb does not dry. So if you washed like your arm, and then before you washed your arm, before you got to your wiping your head, for example, a number of minutes had passed by to where your arms are dry again. So they say that's too long. You had too much of a gap. But if it's a short gap, like we said, like 30 seconds, 1 minute, you start making wudu and then somebody comes in the bathroom and you say salam and start talking to them for like a minute, you can go back to your wudu because the limb that you were washing still isn't dry yet. But if it's very long, like a few minutes, then your wudu, you need to restart it again if there's too long of a gap. So he said, and by the way, this doesn't mean if you dried it. Like if you were washing your limbs and after each limb you took it and with a towel and dried, that's fine. It doesn't mean that the time has passed. That's okay. What we mean is like naturally that the skin would dry in normal weather, which would be, like we said, maybe a minute, maybe slightly longer than a minute, like 2 minutes or something to that effect. So if you finished your wudu and then you realized that you didn't wash your feet, for example, then that's no problem. If it was a few seconds, less than a minute, 2 minutes, something like that, you just wash your feet and go back. You just wash your feet and that's it. If you forgot to wash your arms, for example, you go back to your arms and wash them and then do everything after it, because wudu has to be in order. But if the gap was long, like if you remembered, for example, 10 minutes later, then you have to restart your whole wudu. Yes?
I have 2 questions. Is the dua after wudu, is that sunnah?
The dua after wudu is sunnah, recommended. Which is, what's the dua? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. And then, Allahumma ja'alni min at-tawwabin wa ja'alni min al-mutatahhirin. These are recommended. Recommended, yes.
And washing the ears, does that include inside as well, or just
Yes, very good. So when we talked about wiping the ears, I don't know if I went and mentioned it. So basically just to wipe with one finger inside the ear, while you wipe with your thumb on the outside of the ear. And it's flexible. So when you're wiping anything in wudu, it's more flexible than washing. So if you don't reach every single part of the skin, that's okay. As opposed to washing, you have to wash every part of the skin. Yes?
I've come across a hadith where there was a sahabi who did his wudu and forgot to wash his feet. And he went to the Masjid al-Nabawi about to start salah, and he remembered that he didn't wash his feet.
Yes.
He did his wudu on his feet, and then he continued with his salah. So is this because we don't know exactly how much time transpired?
Yeah, wallahu alam. So he's saying if there's a hadith where the sahabi didn't wash his feet, I have to return back to the hadith to see the explanation. But in general, it's like we mentioned, that if it's short time, if it's a few minutes or something like that, maybe the previous limb still didn't finish dry. But if it's a long time, then you have to restart the wudu. Hold on. No.
Need to stricter basically and more, just like as you mentioned in Maliki, basically back and forth.
Yes, isbagh al-wudu is to make it perfect.
Yeah.
Isbagh al-wudu is to make it perfect and to perform it completely without exaggerating too. So the scholars, they say when you make wudu, don't be excessive in using a lot of water. I think we'll take that later because some people want to leave, but the issue of using too much water or too little water, inshallah we'll try to, somebody remind me and we'll talk more about it next time. بارك الله فيكم هذا وصلى الله على